welcome back to another video! This week I'm going to be doing my first, I think, two-part video. Well, I'm posting part 1 this week and part 2 next week because this project is actually taking a lot longer than I intended. And last week I posted my Inktober 2019 summary and it felt like I was just zooming past every single day because I had to cover 31 drawings in a fairly quick video. And I decided that I didn't want to rush my voiceover this time. So obviously you can see from the title that it's the 10 art styles challenge, and it's the 10 art styles challenge part 1, so we're doing 5 art styles. The first art style is my own, and I'll be using my character Rowan to do this challenge. And yeah, first impressions of this art style challenge, being at the point of completion that I am with it, is that it's so much more time consuming than I would have thought. And I'm only doing my characters like shoulders up, like a bust. I know that there's a lot of people that do like full bodies in the art style challenge, and some people do up to like 20 characters and stuff like that, and I'm like, I couldn't imagine doing that sort of thing. It's like, it would be so time consuming because I'm just doing the bust and every single one's taking me more than an hour to complete, and it's insane. Well, to be fair, I am doing mostly anime based styles. I think in this one it's only anime based styles. Well, sort of, depends if you consider the Pokemon video game an anime or not, but I'm basing my Pokemon style off the video games. But anyway, yeah, like it's so time consuming. I'm just drawing ahead, and I don't know, maybe it's because I picked Rowan. He's got a braid in his hair. Like I like the idea. It's like a French braid sort of thing, so he gets like the aesthetic of like a side shave on just one side, but it's not actually shaved, it's a braid. And it's actually been like, I think that's been the most challenging aspect of Rowan's design to translate into all these styles, the braid in his hair. But that being said, I really like the way that most of these came out. Some of them I feel I could do a little bit better, but I do feel like they're accurate representations of the style. I spent, I think, the longest on my own style just because it's a more painterly kind of aesthetic. I did sort of struggle with a lot of these anime styles. There's obviously the original manga style, and then there's the anime adaptation style, and I was struggling to find like reliable sources for the coloring styles of the actual manga artists. So for a lot of these styles I ended up going for the coloring style of the anime, which I don't really feel is like necessarily representative of the actual style I was going for, because it's like the coloring styles of anime themselves are more indicative of like the production schedules rather than an actual style. But I still think like it was a time saver as well, to be honest. But yeah, this is what my character, my style looks like. It's my character Rowan, and I'd have like a painterly style, sort of anime but with a little bit more realistic proportions. But yep, that's basically Rowan and my style. The first, like, not my style that we're tackling is going to be the Naruto Shippuden style, and I was looking mostly at anime screenshots. I did try to like scroll through to find manga screenshots, but I don't know, I just didn't find a reference that I could find. And also Kishimoto's style has changed, and even in the anime as well, like his style has changed a lot over the last 10 years, but I don't know, I just felt like Rowan would really suit kind of like a Sasuke type face, so I was kind of trying to find pictures of Sasuke's face, and in the manga later on you get like half of his face covered with his hair, and if not, he's got like injuries or stuff like that, or like not the kind of more neutral poker face expression. He tends not to have that in the later bits of the manga and stuff. So yeah, for his hair I was also looking at a character. His name is Yaguda. He's the third Mizukage, and I drew Yaguda not long ago because my friend wrote a fanfic with him in it, so I was kind of looking at him because he has half of his hair kind of like shaved back, I guess. I don't know how it would translate really, but he does show like his hairline for one side of his head, which is how I was emulating that for the bit of Rowan's hair that's got the braid. And yeah, besides that, I really simplified Rowan's like the color thing that holds up his mesh, and also the mesh. The mesh is something that they actually do draw lots of in Naruto. They use it as like an Under Armour sort of situation, and in none of the places where I see it do they actually draw it like coming up from his like body and his arms. Like in my own style, I draw the mesh as its own separate like loose kind of bit clothing that's under his shirt, so his shirt's kind of pulling part of it down, the collar's holding it in place, but beyond that it kind of steps up, and then I also color it sort of transparent, as you could see in the last one. Meanwhile in Naruto they always just like take it as like a skin tight shirt sort of thing with a texture, and then the color that they pick isn't the color of mesh on top of skin, it's just a color of mesh sort of situation, which you're seeing me pick out now. So that was something that I found interesting, and I ended up doing the same sort of thing with the mesh for a couple of the other styles where I couldn't really see, because they might have not had anything mesh in that way actually in the series for me to look at for reference, but I could just sort of see that drawing the mesh like how I would, like lifting up from the body, wouldn't really fit with it necessarily. So yeah, that's the first attempt. And the coloring, again, super simple. It's just like flat. It's a little bit less, is paler and less saturated than in my own personal style, and with cell shading like in anime. But yeah, this is my character Rowan in the style of Naruto, as similar in look and feel to how they draw Sasuke in the series. Next up, originally I had drawn something else in this slot, which is why you can sort of see a spoiler for the next style, the Sailor Moon style, but and in the Sailor Moon one you're going to see the one that I had in its place. But I didn't really like how that one looked, and I didn't really think it fit how, like, the style that I wanted to emulate, so I ended up switching to a different style. So this is me drawing my character Rowan in the style of the like character art of the Pokemon video games. So I was looking at a couple of things. I found a photo that you had like shoulders up of all the character protagonists from Gen 1 to Gen 7, and then I was also looking at the like character art for Gladion from Sun and Moon, because he's got more of like the little angry boy eye shape that Rowan has. So I was looking at that. My favorite thing about this style is how they don't have very harsh spikes with the hair, and also the line art is it's got like a more like scratchy inky feel, and it's sometimes like it disconnects the line art. It's a little bit like simpler in a sense, but it's got a little bit more of a tangible feeling to it. And I guess if I had used the manga instead of a lot of the anime for Naruto and Sailor Moon and stuff like that, I would have gotten more of a tangible feel for those as well. But I don't know, I think so far of all of them that I've done, the Pokemon one is my favorite. It just like I don't know, and I showed it to a friend of mine and she said that it really didn't look like my art. Like, she thought that I'd gotten it commissioned or something, and that's kind of like a compliment, but also kind of weird, because like it is my art, but at the same time it's also me copying a style of something else. So I feel like I did it accurately. The one thing that also posed a problem, now that I see it, for all of the illustrations was, so Rowan's got red tips for his hair, but they're very like slight red tips, and in my own style I do it as a gradient, but most of these other styles don't use gradients. So it was kind of hard to find a way to do the red tips without making it look weird, but also not including them. So for like the collar that holds the mesh up, for example, I felt like not including the buckle on it would still hold true to the style. It's just a different kind of interpretation of the concept of it. But not having the red tips in his hair is actually breaking character. So that's something that I had to find a way to adapt to the illustrations. But it's kind of funny the way that you think of it, of like what elements of your character's design are integral to his design that you need to keep for when you're translating it into different styles, and which ones are things that you can compromise on. For example, in Ryan's case, the color for holding up his mesh. And yeah, and also the colorings, I use the same brushes I did to do the line art, and I like put the opacity down a little bit, so it's got a little bit more of a manual look and feel to it. And with the mesh, again, it's as if that's his skin, and he gave a better look at the one that I didn't end up going for. And I'm not going to tell you what style it is. If you can guess what style that was meant to be, then like be my guess and I'll tell you if you're right or not. But yeah, I'm not going to go in depth into that one. But so this style, I decided, because I had so much like shonen stuff in my list, I would try to do something like very classically shoujo, and what's more shoujo than Sailor Moon. And so with Sailor Moon, I was looking at tuxedo masks, like civilian persona. I think I forget his name. It's been so long since I watched Sailor Moon. I think his name's Mamoru. And yeah, so I was looking at a screenshot of the anime of Mamoru and trying to sort of emulate it. And yeah, the hairstyle is very interesting, just the face proportions. He's got such a large chin. I'm really happy with the way the eyes turned out. And this one was another one where the braid was like very interesting, because they don't do, maybe in the manga it's different, but in the anime they don't do like subset strands beside, like they don't have bits of hair going from like the root to the tip. They just have the tips going up some, and then that's it essentially. So having the braid in the center of like the side of his head connecting to stuff was a very like interesting thing. And also just again, maybe it's because I looked at the anime, not the manga, the style wasn't that simple, so I did the mesh connected to his skin once again. For the colors that we're going to be hopping into not too long from now, I noticed that they did kind of desaturated base tones but hypersaturated shadows. And then the other thing is that they barely did any shadows in the hair. They did like the hair, the base tone, and then highlights, but no shading in the hair, which was good for me because I don't know how I would have shaded it in like detail with the cell shading style. I'm like super rusty with my cell shading. I used to like swear by cell shading, but now I've gotten so used to like painterly styles that I don't remember how to do cell shading. It's like kind of even scary to do cell shading now because it's so like harsh. Like if you don't have it right, then like how are you meant to like do it or whatever? I don't know. It's kind of scary. But yeah, the colours that I picked are less saturated in the base tones, and then they're going to be more saturated in the shadows. The eyes that I found interesting, instead of having black pupils, it has white pupils, and there was barely any like differentiation between like a highlight at the bottom of the eye or a shadow right under the eyelid. There was no, I think, I don't remember that, but I'm fairly sure that there wasn't any shadow for the whites of the eye at all. And I was also just the pointy nose. It's so weird. I know I did sort of the pointy nose in the Naruto style and a bit of a different nose in the Pokemon style, but this pointy nose is like the weirdest one to me. But I really like the way that this turned out, especially the hair. To me, it is actually very indicative of Sailor Moon. And now we're going on to the last style challenge for part 1 of this series. Tune in next week to watch part 2, where I do another 5 different styles. And maybe later on I'll try to tackle on another several styles with another character, maybe, because I'm getting kind of sick of drawing Rowan as much as I love my character Rowan. So this was one that I knew 100% had to be on this list, and it's the Bleach style. And I say that because when I was learning how to draw originally, I did start like very hardcore into like fairy tale, but my favorite look was the Bleach style. It just had so much punch to it, and the way Tite Kubo drew eyes and stuff like that, it was so good. And the reference image that I found, I'm not 100% sure that it's Tite Kubo's actual art, but I did emulate the style of it because to me it does seem reminiscent of what I can think of for his coloring style, and I'm fairly sure I'm not 100% sure if it's Copic markers or watercolors, but it's that kind of a look, and that's what I was trying to. Of course, I'm drawing digitally, and even though I do know how to use watercolors and I do know how to use Copic markers, I'm just doing all these digitally to make it easier on myself, and because I haven't done much digital art lately because of Topa and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, the coloring style I'm not 100% on, but I'm fairly sure that it's indicative of the Bleach style. And of course the eyes and the nose and the neck muscles, this is actually like far more buff than even my own personal style. And like Ryan as a character, like one of his kind of descriptors is that he's tall and skinny, so I tend to try to draw him a little of that. Like you can see his muscles because he's skinny, but he's not actually that bulky. But in the Bleach style, I kind of didn't want to give him a thick with two C's neck, because that's very Bleachy. We haven't gone to Dragon Ball, that's for next week's video, but Dragon Ball is going to be a very interesting one to interpret Rowan into. But yeah, also for the line art, I used my very old inking brush. I don't use this inking brush anymore for line art because I just kind of fell out of the habit, but you can sort of see that Kubo uses a dip pen, and that it's like a very scratchy kind of dip pen, more so than even Kishimoto's manga style art. And this is the first one where I could justify doing the mesh, like how I do the mesh, because Tite Kubo does a lot more detailed clothing and stuff like that, so I was able to like draw the mesh like that. And for the hair, again, with the colouring, I'm doing like an emulated either Copic or watercolour. I'm leaning more towards watercolour, but it's so saturated, almost does make me think it's Copic, but again, one or the other. So I did like kind of a backlit aesthetic, and yeah, just overall a lot of texture, a lot of saturation and like the subsurface capturing. But this is my version of Rowan in the Bleach style. And next up, we're going to be looking at just a pan of the final 5. We got my style, we got Naruto, we got the Pokemon video game character concept art, we got Sailor Moon, and then we got Bleach. And those are my first 5 styles for my 10 style challenge. Thank you very much for watching. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all next week.